Hello, my name's Gordon. Now, one of the things I've come to find is that whenever people are talking about resource-based economy, there's always a big question hanging in the air, and that is how do we get there? How do we actually make the transition, make the move from today to resource-based economy? So, what I'm going to outline here is how it could happen. This is just one way. There are lots of other ways out there from lots of different groups who all say that it can happen in a slightly different way. They're not wrong. It could happen that way. At the end of the day, this is the way I see it happening. Right. A couple of things you need to take as read. The first thing is that there is a political party available for you to vote for. It isn't necessarily there yet, but it will be. Now, you have to then assume that the people in the country have decided that what this political party are proposing actually makes sense. So, what are the political party proposing? Sorry. Well, before we go any further, we have to define some parameters. I mean, what are we trying to do? Well, what we need to do is we need to free up people from their jobs because these are the people who will then be able to go off and do other things, such as retrain as teachers or doctors or nurses or become the next great science boffin, that will essentially revolutionize the way we work. Now, the idea behind that is you need to be able to free people up without affecting your economy. And that is the trick. The idea is you don't affect any economy. You cannot implement a solution where jobs will be lost overseas. So you have to maintain your imports and you have to maintain your exports. And that means you basically have to play the system the way it is being played, but you have to play it slightly smarter. So, how would you do that? Okay, so we've got a country full of people who have voted for a political party who have essentially made this offer. The offer is you need to stay in your job in the short term in order to maintain this economic stability that we've just been talking about. Because if a group of us decide to stop working, then essentially it will affect the amount of money that is generated by the country. And this will have a knock-on effect to the imports and potentially to the exports. So, as that's something we're trying to avoid, people need to stay in their jobs. Now, before this political party came to power, in the future, people were going to stay in their jobs anyway. So you're not actually changing anything there. It leads down to that interview question of where are you going to be in 5 years? The vast majority of us will make up some form of bullshit and say that, we expect to be further up the ladder with a better salary, with more responsibility, and blah, 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 blah. But basically, you're going to be in the same job, or at the very least, you're going to be in the same industry doing a similar job. So, excuse me. So, no matter what we're doing here is we're not actually going to change anything. We're going to say instead of going to your job to earn money, what you're actually going to be doing is going to your job to help the country transition towards a resource-based economy. So how does this happen? Well, first off, what we do is we identify jobs that can be automated, and we automate them. And as we automate these jobs, we remove the person from that job. Now, bear in mind that each of these jobs will have been forecast to exist for the next 5 years, because any business or government or individual for that matter projects into the future for their needs. How much money do we require for X? How much money do we require for Y? And that includes the wages of a person. So essentially, what we will do is we will implement technology in place of the person, but the job will still be paid exactly the same amount of money. Excuse me. This means that the person is now free to do something else, but the person receives the salary still. Now, I know that sounds kind of crazy because technically you're going to say, oh, you're paying a person for doing nothing. Well, okay, that is actually quite possible and that may well happen. But if these people have voted for the resource-based economy that we're talking about, then I don't see why this person wouldn't look to retrain, for argument's sake. they wouldn't have to take out a student loan to retrain because they're getting paid a salary already, which means that the government won't have to, borrow more money to pass on to this person in order for them to upgrade their education. So once we've done this with enough of the population, we can start looking at building facilities that are clean and green, which is something New Zealand likes to pride itself on, irrespective of how well it actually does it. So what's going to happen is that we're then going to need resources. Now, these people who are free, among them will be builders, amongst other things. And we will be looking to these builders to deconstruct houses, not knock them down as happens at the moment, chuck it all into a skip and send it off to a tip somewhere. The idea will be to deconstruct the house and keep as many resources as possible. Now, essentially, those resources have been bought and paid for somewhere else, and we're going to just spend their life in a tip. So what we will actually be doing with these resources is using them to build these facilities that I mentioned a second ago. So we now have people and we now have materials. And these people and materials are now free to actually go and produce something. This could be a photovoltaic cell plant or a wind farm plant, or it could be to set up giant greenhouses for hydroponic vegetables, and so on and so forth. Now, you can argue that, well, if we start producing our own vegetables and whatever we end up producing that we would have otherwise imported, then we're going to be affecting jobs in the supply chain affected with those other nations. Now, the idea here is that no matter what happens, okay, this is kind of like a TPPA, or one of the TPP deals, but it's a self-enforced by the country itself. So what the country will essentially do is it will keep paying for the resources that it was going to consume anyway. An example being a Barbie doll. Okay, it's a very simple example. Mattel makes Barbie dolls. Okay, and New Zealand are projected to spend $10 million over the next 10 years on Barbie dolls. And that's essentially what the future projection is going to be. It's all been calculated. Business, supply and demand, and the business has said that this is what it's going to spend. Now, the way this would happen usually is that people will go to the shop, let's say to the warehouse, and they will go in and they will pick up this Barbie doll and they will buy it. And that, once they purchase that Barbie doll, amongst everything else, the wages or the money that comes from the Barbie doll will then go to wages to keep the staff at the warehouse employed and with money. So what's actually going to happen next is the country will decide not to import the Barbie dolls at all, but it will continue to pay for them through the warehouse. And that way, everybody will continue to get paid, including Mattel. So you haven't actually changed anything other than removing the production of a Barbie doll from the system. The money keeps going, people still getting paid, and we have one less amount of junk that is actually going to end up on a tip somewhere. Now, that is basically the idea of how it will work and how we will slowly evolve to a point where money is not going to be something that the human being is reliant on for their day-to-day life, to the point where everybody is actually going to become a volunteer and will consciously choose to do the job that they are required to do, or that they are currently doing and that they were going to be doing anyway, so that the country can then look at removing people from jobs to help build slightly different facilities that will allow the country to essentially maintain and manage itself. So, in summation, we have kept everybody in a job that we said we were going to keep in a job, but we have actually removed a lot of people, we've gained lots of materials, and we've started to generate new industry and new business that goes directly towards the people. Now, like I say, the reliance on money will eventually vanish over time because we will be doing things for each other for a change. And this is what has been missing. So this requires you and your responsibility to decide to step up and say, yes, I want this because this sounds like a great idea. I hope we get to bring this to you very, very soon. Kia kaha.